Beneath the dappled shade of a tree, on the grounds of the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha in St. Augustine, you'll find a resolute statue of one of its founders. Standing larger than life in traditional Indian wear, it is a fitting tribute to the colossus that was the remarkable Bades Sagan Maharaj.
Bades Maharaj was a very wonderful man. I've known him since my mother was holding my hands. And the last time I saw him was in 1970 when I left Trinidad to go to Canada. I remembered him from the early days when he had his first march of Indian independence in 1947 when I was just a wee bit of a kid. And I remember him leading a group of pundits walking through my street in Curep prior to a big celebration in August, I think, 1947. And that march formed the basis or the catalyst of what today is the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha.
In the late 60s and early 70s, one could not help if one had been a journalist covering the political beat, one could not help not to know Bades Sagan Maharaj. The thing is, he was a towering 6-footer. He was a millionaire from the age of 30, you know, when he bought a lot of stuff from the American base. And he had a presence in Parliament, both in Parliament and in the general society, in the sense that he was the founder of the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha. He was also the President General of the All Trinidad Sugar Estates and Factory Workers Trade Union. And he had founded the People's Democratic Party, and I think it was somewhere in 1950, which he eventually merged into the Democratic Labour Party.
Born 29 February 1920 in Karani to a Brahmin family, Badase's early life was marked by a Hindu upbringing, the murder of his father, and a variety of jobs he used to make a living, including a short career as a wrestler.
In the village itself, on the riverbank, there's a thing called an akhara. That is, you dig out a place and you put an embankment around it and you put sand, loose sand in there, and the wrestlers will get on that and wrestle each other. This is where Bades started. On the riverbank with loose sand around, and you wrestle on the loose sand. And then he became a big wrestler.
Bades would become a leader in every aspect of his colorful life, in the community, politically, philanthropically, and as a hard-working yet shrewd businessman.
Bades was the way he was because I think he had an honest feeling that he could do something for the lot of the Hindus, and he really did. Because, I mean, he came from a poor family. I think at the age of 30, he decided to, he got some contract to dredge the Karani River, and then he bought his first truck, and he went down to the base where he became a contractor there. And when they were moving out, he was always a fellow with foresight. He had the kind of business acumen that would work at the time, and he became a millionaire at the age of 30. You know, he built a lot of the houses in Champlain, you know, built by Bades and so on. But you see, I think what happened is that he never wanted to relinquish the spotlight like so many politicians and professional people, boxers, wrestlers, you know. He lived for the spotlight. He liked the thing to be on him.
While the population of East Indians, 1/3 in Trinidad, we haven't got a single representative on the Public Service Commission. It might be argued that the Public Service Commission is not a racial body. But that is more the reason why they should have an Indian in.
The driven Bades would soon enter public life, concerned as he was for the betterment of the Hindu community and the advancement of the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Every day, my father used to have hundreds of people whom I am home. Some want help, some have a problem. If they have different trouble, he always there to help them.
His first move towards having a public career really took place at Karani village, because from the surplus material at the Shagarama's base, he had built a little shed. with galvanized and wood and concreted floor. And the young boys in the village will hold meetings there, and we'll call people to lecture to us. He was the president. He formed an organization called the Caroni East Indian Association. He was the president, and I ended up being the president of the youth arm of the Caroni East Indian Association because I was a young boy growing up. So he got his opportunity to address public meetings at that venue, creating that venue. And when he moved out of Caroni village, he started organizing, and you will see some pictures of him organizing Indian Independence Day celebrations in 1947. When India got independence, he had a massive Indian Arrival Day celebration in the Tunapuna Recreation Ground. Where the Tunapuna courts are now, that was a cricket ground. That was a place where thousands of people used to gather. And he held the first big celebration there in 1947.
Bhadese's strong sense of fairness led him to become a leader of the sugar unions of the day. And, in an unheard of gesture of solidarity with the workers, he used his own resources to fund what he felt was a just strike action.
You see, there was no one single company like Caroni Limited. You had Orange Grove Company, you had Caroni Limited, you had other smaller companies, and they formed the Sugar Union, the Sugar Manufacturers Association. And they started to negotiate, and they will not recognize one union across the board. When all these unions, unsuccessful individual unions, came to him and asked him to lead the trade union movement in the sugar belt, and he took over, he asked for recognition of one single union.
The early days in the sugar workers, when there was fragmentation in various groups for leadership of the sugar workers, and he was the first guy who went out and brought the sugar workers together for what was then the All Trinidad Estate Workers, Sugar Workers Union.
Bades Maharaj called a strike of sugar workers in those early days. A sugar worker couldn't afford to miss 1 week's pay, and he called a strike. But he said that he personally will give every worker $5 per week to remain on strike. And from his own pocket, he ran a strike for 5 weeks, paying the sugar workers to stay away from the industry.
Bhadase became more and more involved in the political process. His popularity, though, would not sit well with everyone.
If a Friday passed and Bades wasn't there, something was missing in the house, you know. And like I said, there was a sort of mutual respect between himself and Dr. Williams, because Dr. Williams knew of the clout he had in the Hindu community. It was a serious political advantage because, I mean, it's a large community, you know, and Bades was able to control that and bring that control as representative in the House in the Houses of Parliament, in that you had to respect the man, and you had to respect what he said, you had to respect what positions he took, whether you agreed with them or not, because of the large constituency he represented.
The formation of the Democratic Labour Party was quite a historic event in Trinidad, because out of that party reincarnated other parties. So after that party came, I think it was the Democratic Labour Party, and following that it was the United Labour Front, ULF, and after that I think the other opposition party became the current party, the UNC, which is led by Bhadase Pandey. So that was not the only accomplishment of Bhadase, but I would say that in 1958, he did a wonderful job in defeating, for the first time, the PNM in the first and last federal election. And therefore, that was one of the strengths he posed in his political career. So I think that was really, really a man who had, or who you could describe as an astute leader
he would come into Parliament. At that time, I was a political reporter for the Express. John Barr was a political reporter for the Guardian. And there were just two of us, I think, on the press table. And Bades would come in and slam down two pearl-handled revolvers, you know, beautiful-looking weapons, you know. And he'd say, oh, have this, you know. But we would stay away from you know, touching the thing, you know. And he said, that's for them fellas across the, meaning Jamada and them. And I mean, every evening, every Friday evening, this was the kind of drama. And he would actually challenge one or two of them, especially John Barratt, who was the representative for St. Augustine, Dr. John Barratt, a dentist. He would challenge him to fight. Come downstairs, and John Barratt would make sure that he leaves a little before the session ended. You know, so it was real drama in Parliament. I mean, the Parliament today and the Parliament then, there's no comparison. You know, when Friday came around, you wanted to be there.
Another of Badase's intense passions was education, and he saw Hindus as being the only main religious group without a system of organized schooling.
He was always willing to provide education. He said, and I quote, for the Indians, who were the only group disenfranchised of a denominational education, because you had the Canadian Mission, you have just started the Muslim schools, the Arya Samaja schools, and his phenomenal approach to this was outstanding, because if I recall correctly, within the years of 1952 to 1953, he built something like 32 schools.
He had the money. He was the only Hindu with money. And he had the surplus material from the American bases. And he used the money and the surplus material not only to build houses for himself, but also to build schools across the country.
In my lifetime in education now in Canada, I have encountered a lot of young or older people who are now in top positions in Canada who tell you that, oh, I've been to a Mahasabha school. And just recently I was in Brandon, Manitoba, I think, and I met a guy from Trinidad. And he was telling me he was a teacher in a Mahasabha school, but he now holds the position of Dean of Graduate Studies at Brandon University. So I felt very proud of that, because this is a man who started with a Mahasabha school, and over the years, he have reached to one of the top levels in the field of education.
His many tasks he met with a clever mind and a big heart. Be it business, politics, education, or culture, Trinidad and Tobago would be a different country today were it not for the incredible achievements of Bades Sagan Maharaj.
He was an enormous presence on the political scene, and he commanded that presence in the among the Hindu population.
He was a genuine person, you know, always there for people.
He always believed that the power of the mind, the power of the brain, has greater force than any other power in the world. And he wanted the children to develop the brain power.
Bades Maharaj, in my opinion, has made a significant contribution in so many facets to Trinidad life that his contributions will live on based on what he has laid and which is still carried out in the life of Trinidad and Tobago.